still ask if there's anyone who wants to.
Same number of watches as all the other YouTube videos.
I'm worried about that place on
That's
Avenue.
right, one. I did that one time. I pulled it up and I'm like, because I saw it on the Facebook page. I said,
Oh,
I wonder how it looks. So I pulled it up and I'm like, what?
No,
when I first pulled it up, 0 views. I was the first one to view it. And
Oh,
I'm
right
like,
now, they want to sell it, so it's in a
I'm
beach.
sure there's a lot of people that are like really excited to watch
So
it.
they just have to look at it.
I just put up.
Right. How that dries, that's pretty good.
Can't watch the grass grow right now, so your options are limited.
You could watch it wither. Harrison will be here in a second. He was running late from work, so
Oh,
he had to run home and change his clothes real quick.
see, it's a good thing they changed it to that.
Yeah. And then, let's see, who else? Daniel.
Or Danny.
I thought I saw John walk in. Maybe he went into the restroom. I thought I saw him coming in. 1, 2.
There's 6 of us.
Mr. Johnson coming?
He's here.
Oh,
Oh, it's working. I can hear everybody on the other end. Push the button for silence. Get a hat to hang over the speaker. Yeah.
Sounds like Mr. Sir.
Mr. Sir.
Ain't you?
Hey. What's up?
It's been a long day. Yeah. Drive through turkeys and all that.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
I'm knocking on your door.
Yeah, although I heard from Jerry, I know.
Yeah, that was like downtown cowboy. I was at like
What the kind of rule of thumb is.
Breton in 30 seconds.
This is a change.
In that
I don't like it until last minute.
I just
Right.
We don't have to.
Wonder, don't they?
I have no idea where they came from.
The gossip, but I don't know.
wandered into a downtown area like that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Hi. There's trouble.
It's a good sign from the old days.
Finally got a new mic set up this way. I know.
I can
People
hear
actually
you
gonna be
pretty
able to
easy.
hear us now. You're gonna have to say things, you know, that make
Who is
sense.
that? What is this? Who is that?
I have to make sure we're on a game because people will be able to
Hello.
hear us.
Hey, we do have 7
We're live and we're on the air, so.
Oh no. Well, we've been live. They just couldn't hear us. And I was like, that's fine.
Before they had to post it.
Well, hello, chair. There you go.
Order at 7:01. If you would please rise to Here we go.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Me?
They all do them all at the same time. All right. Please raise your right hand. I, Kathy Bremer, I, Harrison Owens, I, Dale Bray, and I, Jerry Hall, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Michigan, the City Charter and Code of Ordinances of the City of Cedar Springs, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Planning Commission member to the best of my ability. I will.
I do.
Would sign the bottom there.
Another term.
So they're splitting that up into 4 parcels?
Oh, here we go.
Man, I was so confused. Thank you.
I will now open the floor for nominations for chairperson.
I nominate Craig Owens.
I'll second that nomination.
Move to close nomination.
Second.
I will call the roll call for Mr. Owens as chairperson. Mrs. Bremer?
Yes.
Mr. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Bray?
Yes.
And Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Congratulations. I, Craig Owens, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Michigan, the City Charter and Code of Ordinances of the City of Cedar Springs, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Planning Commission chairperson to the best of my abilities.
I will. Right, we'll open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Clint Conley.
Second. Support for that, all right. Any other nominees? Okay. Is there a motion to close the nominees for vice chair?
So move.
Support?
Second.
All right, roll call vote on Mr. Clint Conley to serve as vice chairperson. Mr. Bray? Yes. Mrs. Bremer?
Yes.
Mr. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Owens votes yes. Harrison Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
I, Clint Conley, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Michigan, the City Charter and Code of Ordinances of the City of Cedar Springs, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Planning Commission Vice Chairperson to the best of my ability.
I will.
All right, I know we just did a roll call vote on that, but just for the official record, roll call, Mr. Bray? Here. Mrs. Bremer?
Here.
Mr. Conley?
Here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Do we know anything about Mr. McGrath? All right, so we'll just mark him as absent. Mr. Nixon?
Here.
Mr. Owens?
Here.
Mr. Watson?
Here.
Craig Owens is here. We have Rebecca Johnson, our clerk, Mr. Womack, our city manager, and Mr. Johnson, our city planner, with us this evening. Page 4 in your packet, if you'd address, look at that, it's the minutes from our November 12th, 2019 meeting, and need a motion to approve those minutes, please.
A motion.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a support. Anybody see anything in there that needs to be addressed? Okay, all in favor of approving those November 12th meetings, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries, thank you. And our agenda for this evening, I will make the motion that we approve that agenda. Is there support for that?
Second.
Anything on there that anybody sees we need to address? Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Public comments. Anybody would like to address us? We are all ears. You can just step up here to the podium and tell us what's on your mind. We'd love to be able to hear from you. Yes, sir. Or whoever.
Well, I would like to say something about the approval or non-approval, and I hope it's non-approval of a pot shop in this little town of Cedar Springs.
Could you go over there? So, because we're recording it, so we want to make sure the microphone picks you up. So we got those comments preserved.
You'll be on TV.
Oh, I hope not.
All right, so start again so we can hear that.
Right. I came tonight to voice my disapproval of a pot shop here in Cedar Springs, and I've marshaled some evidence, and one of them is a book that I got. I haven't read yet, but I just got it, about the marijuana leading to mental illness and violence. And I did read in the paper this week about 2 instances where people on drugs had accidents, and one was a beating up of somebody. And it says in this one paper in the Wall Street Journal, and it's a letter written by Mr. Benziger, who was administrator of the Drug Enforcement Administration back in 1976, and he says the marijuana contains more than 460 different chemicals, and as the editorial board points out, is 45 times more powerful than the marijuana of the 70s and 80s. And extensive scientific research has documented serious harm to brain development for teenage users who appear to be the ones who like to do that. Of course, there's other people that go to Colorado for vacation and they think they're going to have fun smoking marijuana out there, which they have done over the years. And they were the first state to legalize marijuana, and it leads the nation in use by 12 to 17-year-olds. And gangs and drug dealers are cheering because their sales have skyrocketed, selling to minors and others at lower prices than dispensaries can offer. And then we have to think about these people that have an addiction for profit. They want to make a lot of money, and they want to launder their money through these pot shops. And they tell me that, I guess somebody's warning the banks. Anyway, and that's mostly what I have to say about it, and I hope that the Planning Commission doesn't approve that. And I have also heard that the little shop up there in Evert, they get tons of people coming there from all over, but do they stay and walk the streets and buy things in the shops? No. They get their cars and get on the fast track back home. They want to get started smoking. So, all right, my name is Ann McLaughlin, and I live in Nelson Township, not too far from here. My grandchildren actually have gone to Cedar Springs, so I have a big interest in this.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Dan Spitzbergen, and I would like to address the Planning Commission regarding one of the items that's going to be coming up on the agenda tonight. I think it's the non-conforming uses. And I would like to kind of mention to you, I don't know how much you are aware of the number of non-conforming uses are in the city of Cedar Springs. In the residential real estate area, but it's a substantial number. And I would like to propose to the Planning Commission that there's a couple of solutions that can help with the existence of non-conforming properties. One of which would be on the properties that are on the east side of First Street between Cherry and Beach, that those properties be zoned either R2 or R3. They are currently zoned R1. There are, I think, 8 properties there, and 6 of the 8 properties are non-conforming. This is just a little bit of the situation that's going on in town here as far as non-conforming uses are concerned. Also, if you look at the zoning map, that part of town jumps directly from an R1 zone to a downtown commercial zone. There's no transient zoning in there at all as a buffer type zoning. So that would be a good buffer type zoning between the R1 and the commercial. And also, I'd like to propose that the R3 zone, there is an R2 zone currently north of Muskegon Street on the west side of town, and there's an R2 zone on the south side of Muskegon Street, almost to the industrial zone. And I would like to propose that those 2 R2 zones be connected by an R2 extension of that zone along West Street. West Street has become an industrial corridor and a truck route due to the large industrial area in the southwest corner of the city. And so West Street is not really anymore the residential type neighborhood street that it once was. And so it would be consistent with good planning to look at the zoning on the east side of West Street, which is in the city itself. As a result of the changes that we've seen in town, it's no longer the highest and best use. There are currently 2 4-family buildings that are non-conforming within that area. There's also a commercial building and a foster home within that area. And it would warrant looking at the zoning because nothing R1 is being built or even considered in that area. It would not be considered spot zoning because it would connect 2 existing zones that are not currently connected. It would make that whole R2 area one contiguous area instead of 2 separate ones. As far as the non-conforming uses, also, I'm not sure you are aware, but, and John Stout can probably back me up on this. I haven't talked to him about it, but he probably knows more about it than I do. And that is that when people are going to sell properties that are in a non-conforming zoning status, due to the mortgage changes that have taken place between 2010 and now, it's getting to the point where Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac do not want to buy mortgages that are on non-conforming properties. So as such, to give you an example, I am currently sitting on a sale that was 2 days from closing and has been put on hold because the property is a non-conforming property and the mortgage company doubts that Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac will buy the mortgage. So non-conforming is a really big issue, okay? It's not something to take lightly. It affects a lot of people here in town, many more people than even realize that it affects, because there are a lot of 2 families in R1s, there are 4 families in R1s, there are 4 families in R2s, there are single families in R2s, R3s. You know, it's really a hodgepodge of zoning as far as what is existing in town. And I would certainly appreciate the Planning Commission take a serious look at this issue. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address this? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public comment section. Planning commissioners, any reports of conflicts of interest or ex parte communication regarding information on our agenda this evening? Okay, seeing none, we will move to our scheduled public hearings. We have two of them tonight. In your packet, I believe, page 68, I think, if correct, is our list of the proposed zoning map changes for our public hearing. So
71.
is it 71?
68 on mine.
71 and 72.
Well, that's the map. The list of the properties starts at 68. So I will open that public hearing on those proposed zoning map changes that are listed there. This was for us to try to clean up some of the things that we had left over from a lot of our changes that we have been going through the last several months. So, Mr. Womack, anything that you want to state? I know those properties are kind of like all over the place, but I don't know if you want anything that you want to address there.
This has obviously been a very extensive, wide-ranging, and complicated thing that we've worked on for almost 12 months now. As you were just stating, this is kind of a collection of the either properties that were previously spot zoned or have some kind of special location or some kind of special use that might be benefiting the community as an overall status for developments in the future. This just didn't fit in with the previous changes that were proposed with the rural residential neighborhood business and the mixed use to industrial changes that we had previously asked this body to consider. So I guess I don't have anything specific about any particular properties to discuss.
Okay. Mr. Johnson, you got anything on that list? Okay. So, as this is a public hearing, we have it open for public comments for this list of properties that we're going to be addressing tonight. So, anybody that would like to comment on any of those properties, again, we'd like to invite you to step up to the podium and you can address us on that.
I don't know how many of you have actually, again, Dan Spitzbergen. I don't know how many of you have actually gone through each of those properties, looked it up on the maps, and considered it. I did, and so I have some comments that I would like to make regarding them. On parcel B, it is 248 North Main Street. The proposal is to change it to R1 Single Family Residential.
Hold on one second. B, we have listed as 490 West Street.
On 68, he's talking
Okay,
about page 68.
69.
It's parcel 410330
Our numbers are different.
151013.
Okay,
Yeah, it's right here.
all right, so we have 2 pages on there, so, all right.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've got your list or just the one that went out to the public. So, anyway, that one is currently zoned R4, and it's being proposed to change it back to R1. That really kind of surprised me. It's a piece of property that is directly behind the businesses on Main Street on one side. It is up against the trailer park on the other side, and I believe it's very close to the creek, somewhere right in there also. And to change it from a B4 to a R1 just seems ludicrous. I mean, there's absolutely no reason that that would ever be used for R1. Comments of that piece of property. Next one, would you like me, do you want to respond, or do you want me to just?
This is just your time to
Okay.
talk. We're not responding at this point.
All right, okay. Parcel E, which is, ends in, it's 88 North 5th Street. It's currently zoned mixed use. Okay, and you're proposing that it be changed to R1 single family. the current use is R1. However, on the proposed map that I was given, it is still marked as industrial on the proposed map. So I would say that's probably an error in the mapping. Parcel F is 129 West Maple. And that one is currently zoned B3, and they're proposing that it be changed to R1.
You're on page 69 now for us.
Yeah.
Okay? We on the same page? Kind of, sort of speaking? All right. I don't understand why that one would be changed to an R1 zoning. It's along the White Pine Trail. It's right up close to the creek. It's currently used as industrial. I believe it's something to do with the power substation that Consumers has. I don't know if that's the one or not. It may or may not be. I'm not sure.
There's a small sliver there.
Okay, I don't have the map in front of me, so I just have my notes. But I was just asking why that would go to R1 from a B3. Okay. On parcel H, 116 North 5th Street, that is currently a B3 zone, and it's being proposed to be changed to an R1 single family. And that area is about the only way to ever extend Maple Street. And with what we've got going in the new projects in that area, I would think that it would be smart to look at the idea of extending Maple Street all the way out to 5th so that there's another way of egress from all the activities that will be going on in that area. So to change that to R1 seems like you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if that were ever to become used as an extension of West Maple. And on parcels 116 North 5th, 130 West Muskegon, and 115 West Muskegon, they are a combination of different zones being recommended to, well, okay, excuse me. 130 West Muskegon is now B2, and they're looking at changing it to B3. And I'm just asking the question why? Why it's not a major property? Why would you need to change it? 115 West Muskegon is now zone mixed use, and they're proposing to change it to B3. Again, I would just like an understanding of why, because I only have logic on my side. I really don't have the future planning that's gone into this. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm questioning why. On 171 West Muskegon, it is now zone mixed use, and they're proposing it go to B3. And again, I'm questioning why. And that's the questions and comments I have regarding that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. And I would appreciate a response.
Any other public comments on this proposed changes? All right, so seeing none, we will close that public hearing. We have a second public hearing. This takes us up to, back all the way up to page 9, I believe, in your packets. So we'll open the public hearing for the special land use for 31 West Ash Street. This is I know we're talking about a specific property here in 31 West Ash, but it's really more of kind of a general policy, right? Mr. Womack, if you want to kind of address that, because it's not going to be just one property ultimately that we'll have to consider with something like this down the road.
Yeah, so this is kind of a similar problem to which we have with the non-conforming use, which is another thing we're discussing today. So in the B2 zoning district, which is the downtown commercial zoning district, there are a number of single-family residential homes. Under the city's zoning table of uses, any residential, single-family residential use which does not have Main Street frontage is a special land use. So this home, and of course I don't know when the home was built, but it was built at some point before there were special land uses. And so the home, when it was built, never received a special land use. So now that the zoning has changed, and this obviously changed before I was here, before you guys were here, the homeowner wants to sell this property, and the bank comes to the city and says, well, you know, if it burns down, can it be rebuilt? And the answer is, yes, if it gets a special land use. Well, the bank doesn't want to wait until it burns down to then, at that point, find out whether this body, the planning commission, is willing to give it a special land use at that point. They want to have it in hand now so that they are assured that the home can be rebuilt in the future. Now, this body has in the past understood the dilemma and has had no problem issuing these special land uses, but it's not something that I can do on my own. Special land uses are within the purview of the planning commission, not the zoning administrator. So basically what the homeowner is asking is for this body to give him a prospective special land use so that the bank can be satisfied that in the future, should this home burn down, that it could be rebuilt under the same specs that it currently exists. So that's the ultimate issue.
So, we have opened the public hearing, so if there's anybody that would like to address us on this special land use, please.
Hi, my name is Erin Van Sickle, and I am the owner of this property, and as he said, I am trying to sell it, and my buyer's lender came and said they want this special land use permit. This house was built in 1927. It has been a resident the whole time that I'm aware of. I didn't have this when I have a mortgage. Wasn't an issue for me 4 years ago when I bought it, so I was not really aware that this was needed. So that is why I'm asking for the special land use permit.
Any other comments on this property at 31 West Ash?
I'm not completely aware of the situation, but I believe that this is another situation where we've got a non-conforming issue here. And it seems to me that if you look at the zoning ordinance language, it states that if a property is 40% or less damaged by fire, it can be rebuilt. And if it's 60% or more damaged by fire, it cannot be rebuilt. And so I hope we have a very good fire department, because it's up to the fire department whether these houses can be rebuilt or not. And that's a sad situation. That should be changed. Thank you.
Right, any other public comments on 31 West Ash? All right, seeing none, we will close that public hearing as well. So we'll move to new business and again take up before us the request to approve a special land use, a prospective special land use for 31 West Ash Street. We have done, as Mr. Womack says, we have done this for some other properties before. The specific language, I think, is down on page 15, the special land uses for that, that zone there, if you want to see some of that stuff in there. But What is your pleasure and how would you like to proceed with this?
Mr. Owens, if I could
Yes.
just point out one thing.
Mhm.
So there is a distinction between this property, which is a special land use, versus some other properties which are non-conforming uses. Those are two totally separate and different things.
Correct. Thoughts on how would you like to proceed with this?
I would make the motion to authorize a special land use for 31 West Dash.
A second.
Discussion on that?
Well, if you look at the list that we need to go by in order to issue a special land use, it appears that it fills the bill. And the home was built in 1927. So, I don't think we had any zoning back then. And I think that's part of the problem with the non-conforming and all over town is that we've had a lot of older homes that were here before as a village. So,
Right. We have motion support to approve a provisional special land use for 31 West Ash Street. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Yes.
Mr. Owens, I just want to clarify too, as Mr. Hall stated in his motion to authorize a special land use, he did not authorize a provisional
Okay.
special land use, so.
And I think the term is perspective.
Perspective, sorry.
I would make that change.
Okay, prospective special land use.
And I'll second.
Okay, so prospective land use, special land use for 31 West Ash Street. All in favor of that, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion
Look for
carries.
your motion, I couldn't find it.
Thank you.
It didn't,
Mr. Owens, for the property owner.
Yes.
I guess I'll have to get back in contact with the mortgage lender. I don't know if I have that contact information, so if she could provide it, would be great.
Okay.
And then I'll just put on my letterhead indicating that this was approved, and we'll make sure that's written down in the eternal records of the city of Cedar.
All right. So Ms. Fansickle, you can get that to him and then,
Yes.
okay.
Absolutely, thank you.
Excellent. All right. We have a site plan to take a look at. It starts on page 21 in your packet. Want to just point out, just so we make sure that we're not, nobody thinks we're talking about two different properties or trying to pull a fast one on something. The paperwork that you have in your packet has an address on there of 4250. In your agenda, it has an address of 4288. But we are talking about the same property. That has been taken care of. So those addresses are different, but based on what you're looking at. But they are, it is the same piece of property that we're talking about. So not included in our packets ahead of time because of the late date that this was submitted in December and with all the holidays and everything. We just got tonight, I think you probably found it by your computer, Mr. Johnson's review of the site plan. So since that's brand new to us, Mr. Johnson, why don't you kind of walk us through that site plan? Because some of us just saw it just a couple minutes before the meeting started.
Well, this is a site plan review for a O'Reilly Auto Parts site plan, which would be on 17 Mile Road, the south side, right directly across from Taco Bell. They want to build a 7,627 square foot auto parts store. They need site plan approval from the Planning Commission in order to do that. My report points out that they would need to go through the development cooperation agreement with Solon Township. I think you're aware of that. Sites served by water and public sewer. And my report kind of goes through the site plan review items that are missing. There are a number of them, some of them are minor, some of them are not. Things that I think you will eventually weigh in on is the sidewalk requirement. The ordinance requires that. They can, however, go to the city council and ask for a waiver of that. It's been done for the Holiday Inn, I think, and maybe for some other ones. I think given the people that I've seen walking up and down 17 Mile Road on both sides of the street, having a sidewalk there would be very important over the long term.
If I may, I'm just curious at how long the sidewalk would have to be. Would it just be the length of the lot?
Yes.
Okay.
They're only responsible for their part.
Yep.
Some comments on landscaping. The cottonwood tree, which Ms. Bremer has pointed out, I believe that is within your purview as a condition of approval to have that removed for public, in the public interest for safety and nuisance characteristics. Some other things show how they comply with the lighting ordinance, the waste container. Those are things that they can address. I think one of the biggest issues I want to point out is the driveways and the access. Looking at the land that can be developed on that side of the road, it's critical where the driveways can go. We do have access management regulations which we adopted a year and a half ago in our zoning ordinance, which requires that all driveways align or be at least separated by 150 feet if they're across the street. So I just pulled a map off of Ken Access and pointed out some where some driveways could go, and looks like that. It may not have come through real well on your computer, but driveway number 1 across from Taco Bell, that's where AutoZone, excuse me, O'Reilly wants to put their driveway. Well, wherever driveway goes in first for the remainder of that vacant property really affects where the other driveways can go. So this is a chance to do some planning and get out ahead of that, because in reviewing the site plan for O'Reilly's, they could also share a driveway with driveway number 2 as shown on your drawing. And then on the north side of the road, there's 2 vacant parcels that's split by a lot line. I don't know the ownership, but we would want to require maybe a shared driveway there as well. And if you go further to the west, driveway number 4, which is across from, I'm not sure what that store is there. I think it's, I think that is.
That's the old farmhouse.
On the north side?
No, that's
the auto parts store now.
Okay. Auto parts. Well, you could put one there, but then you have that little sliver of land just to the left of that. The land could be developed in the back. So what's access to that parcel? So the ordinance says each property is allowed 1 driveway, but our access management regulations give you the authority to require parking lot connections, requires you or allows you to require shared driveways, and there are mechanisms in the ordinance to make that happen. So this is the first time you've seen that. I'm just pointing it out to you. We'll point that out to the O'Reilly people as well. I would like to maybe check with traffic engineers at Fishbeck Thompson, who are our city engineers, and maybe the road commission to see what they think about that. It is the road commission that issues driveway permits. However, you are in charge of site plan review, and you get to decide where that driveway goes as well, simply by saying we will not approve the site plan where that driveway is proposed, because we think in the public interest and move traffic safety, we think this is a better idea. So any comments you have would be appreciated tonight, but I think we will pass our report on to the applicant and also check with the road commission and our traffic engineers to see what they think of that as well.
Some things I can point out while I'm looking at it. So where number 3 is, the driveway number 3, that's going to be developed into a county municipal complex. So you'll see a narrow strip next to where the Taco Bell is. That is a reserved 33-foot driveway there. Not sure if the county plans are going to put the driveway reflective of the driveway.
Right.
So I guess I can touch base with them and see about that. Overall, a well thought out and nice report. I appreciate that. One thing I would ask you to think about and consider is to the east. There is a building there. And if you look at the site plan presented by O'Reilly, it appears that they have some kind of drainage coming off the parking lot on the east-hand side instead of some kind of access drive. It is possible to connect their parking lot to the parking lot of that building to the east. I don't know what that would do to the drainage characteristics, but they might be able to, this is a scientific term, scooch that drainage down to the south just a little bit. That might create enough room for the access driveway there.
Yep. No, that's a good idea. That's.
But overall, that's probably in the long-term interest of that area, which might also work well with the sidewalk. That would be nice to go all the way to at least the creek there and eventually the West Street.
Yes, sir.
Just got one thing for Mr. Johnson. The parcel there that is to the east there, where Mr. Stout has his business, that place has flooded before. So we need to have some kind of, the drainage proposal needs to go away from that property as much as possible. That is a, I'm not good at looking at those things. But we need to make sure that that property is not going to be affected any more than it already is affected.
Of course, Mr. Nixon, the city's engineer, will be reviewing all those characteristics. Unfortunately, again, as Mr. Johnson indicated, poor timing with the submission of the site plan for getting those types of reports. So we are definitely reviewing that aspect of it.
One thing I would point out, well, for O'Reilly, you as the planning commission can require the parking lot connection to their east and west lot line. But for the realty office, Mr. Stout, to the east, we can't require them to go onto their property to make that connection. That would have to wait until they voluntarily do it, or if it turns over and it's required for site plan review by the commission, then you would have the authority to make them connected, so. But at least you're doing the right thing by making that connection where you can. So it'll be built in sections and iterations, and you can only, but the long term, you want to have a grand plan just for that short area, which is the driveway locations, the sidewalk connections, and the parking lot connections. And you want to make sure you get that each time somebody comes before
I'm
you.
I'm personally concerned for the long term of the 17-mile corridor there. With the traffic there is going to increase. It's not going to go down, and it's already can be difficult in spots around there to get on the 17-mile, to get off the 17-mile. So my vote would be in favor of whatever the safest approach that can be determined with traffic engineers and other input into that. And I would love to see as much behind 17-mile access so that some of that traffic in between these businesses wouldn't have to go out on a 17-mile to do that on both sides of the street as we move forward.
And that's another thing with the sidewalks. You know, when we tell one business they don't have to do it, then pretty soon you've just got spot sidewalks, and I think we need to err on the side of getting them all put together, because like you said, people walk up and down both sides of 17-mile, and I think we need sidewalks on both sides.
I would agree with that.
Ms. Bremer, just so you're aware, every time these things go in front of the city council, we make sure that the applicant is fully made aware that we intend to require them to put the sidewalks in. It's always been the city council's position that when the sidewalk meets either side of their property, that is when it would be required at that point. So I totally agree with you. I just want you to be aware it's not that we're letting them off the hook.
Oh, no, I realize that, yeah.
I just want to add a comment to Mr. Conley's about the fact that rear access, at some point in time, we've talked over the years many times about having some rear access going all the way out to White Creek. There needs to be something put into this to have some kind of rear access out of that.
That could take the cooperation of all property owners there.
Absolutely, but we
You have to start
build it into the plan to have it at least understood that we want that down the road here.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson, is there anything that you need us to weigh in on before you forward this back to the applicant? Any decisions that you'd like us to make tonight? I know we're not approving the site plan, but
right.
But anything like
Mr. Johnson, the poplar tree, the aspen tree?
Cottonwood.
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 Yeah, is that something they should probably weigh in on? Is that something that exists currently on the property?
Yes.
I believe so.
Yes, it does.
It is definitely a nuisance tree, and it grows real fast, and it breaks easily, and it spreads these little white cotton ball seeds everywhere. Oh, He's agreeing.
Well, so I think there was actually another tree that was going to be installed, which was also not approvable under the city's landscaping ordinance. But specifically, removal of the tree can be expensive. I think the board should probably weigh in on that now, so that the applicant's aware of what they might be required to do.
What are your thoughts?
I agree that it should be removed. Cottonwoods are nuisance trees. They do tend to break apart, just as she says, and the cotton is typically a nuisance. It's my understanding that cottonwoods, there's male and female cottonwoods, and the female cottonwoods are the ones that spread the cotton, and if I'm correct, they're not actually supposed to be in Michigan, but don't quote me on that. But it makes sense to get rid of it because it can get everywhere and make problems for everyone.
Okay. We'll pass that on to the applicant. So other than that, I think to come back to you with possible driveway location recommendations would be our next step.
Yep.
Mr. Johnson, subpart 3 regarding 38 parking spaces for the proposed.
Yep.
Does the planning commission have authority to reduce that number?
I think if they show that there's space available.
It just seems like, and maybe this is just me, 36 parking spaces for a, Riley Auto Parts. If everybody's car breaks down at the same time, they might need it, but it seems like an awful lot of parking spots.
You're right. But our ordinance says, that's what you have to have, so. Anything else?
Well, if they went and parked across the street, then we could reduce it, right?
Right.
On their delivery dock for semis or thereabouts, I didn't see anything on the building for that.
I don't think they have a loading dock, but in the southeast corner of the building, parking lot by that building corner, looks like it's striped, and that might be a loading or unloading zone.
Okay.
I just want them to acknowledge that by noting that on the plan.
Yeah, but I didn't see anything, because they're gonna have semis deliveries, and there's no designated real area there that they show as a loading dock.
I think it's just surface loading.
There's usually a side door, like a garage door.
Yeah.
And the tractor trailers have Tommy lift gates on them.
For maneuverability, I'm thinking.
Well, to drop all the pallets on them. And so they'll be able to go up and down. There's no docks on auto parts stores like that.
Okay.
So you have everything from us that you need to pass on?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. Item C, under new business, we still, we've got some other non-conforming uses. Page 36 in your packet starts, Mr. Womack has given us not only the Cedar Springs wording, but also the uses from some of the other surrounding municipalities. Anything you want to point out on there, Mr. Womack?
Sure. So, as Mr. Spitzbergen indicated, and as you all know, this community is quite old. I do understand that some houses exist back to the 1860s at least, which, was a time before zoning. So, as this board is quite aware, zoning is the basic process of trying to kind of make orderly progression of the community into the future. So we try to put commercial buildings next to commercial buildings, we try to put industrial buildings next to industrial, residential next to residential, etc. Now, we can't account for all of these properties and how they came to be. There's simply too many of them. Records aren't always there. But we do at least know that some of these, quadplexes, for example, were put up into zoning that was single-family residential at the time that they were put up. Now, I don't know, again, how that got approved, but they're clearly built as quadplexes, and they were clearly built into single-family residential homes. So is that legal or illegal non-conforming? I don't know. At this point, it doesn't really matter. The question ultimately for these property owners is, can they be rebuilt after they are burned and destroyed? Because as previously indicated, banks tend not to want to give mortgages on the properties that can't ultimately be rebuilt in the same fashion or form as they currently exist. So this creates a policy problem for the planning commission. And of course, this policy has been addressed previously, which is how we got these zoning maps, and of course, ultimately the master plan. When a municipality chooses a zoning district to be R1, they're indicating we want all these properties to be single-family residential. Same thing with R2, R3, etc. They're indicating that we expect that all the properties in this district to eventually, if not already, and all new builds to conform to the standards that are imposed upon them by this zoning designation. So if you are an R1 zoning property, we expect that to ultimately be a single-family residential home. So it becomes a policy issue for both this planning commission and the city council eventually to say, okay, you have your quadplex in the middle of a single-family residential district. The current policy is that if it burns down, is destroyed by 60% or more, that it cannot be rebuilt as a quadplex, and instead has to now become a single-family residential, which is what the zoning of that property is. Now, from the property owner's perspective, currently, as a quadplex, you are getting 4 times the amount of rent versus if it were to become a single-family residential, and now you're only getting 1 times the amount of rent, right? So it's a money issue ultimately for the property owner. For the planning commission and the city council, it's about how do we want to design the community. This is a policy of, do we want to remove multifamily tenant buildings from what is otherwise a single-family residential home neighborhood. So it's one of those questions that is above my pay grade. It's something that you guys and council would have to discuss. What I presented here is a couple of the surrounding municipalities and what their non-conforming ordinances look like. So my reading of them seems to indicate that what their policy is if it's destroyed by fire, that particular building can be rebuilt in the same exact footprint that it currently exists as, or barring that, it would then have to conform to the district that it is built in. In other words, if it's a quadplex now and it gets burnt down, it could be rebuilt as that quadplex, or if not that quadplex, it would then have to become single-family residential. Of course, what you're ultimately doing there is you're extending the life of this multifamily tenancy in a single-family residential district ad infinitum. It could be that way for 1,000,000 years. And you'll never ultimately change the district to conform to what the policy has been. The policy is single-family residential, and if you adopt that change, it will never become that. So, it's a policy question. That's the short and simple answer. But if this board wishes to proceed, I could take some of the language, synthesize a proposed change, and bring it back to this board for consideration.
Because ours, as it's worded now, does not say that it can be rebuilt under the same footprint.
Correct.
Okay. I don't know. I guess that would be my preference. I mean, I think that when you're talking about an older community and people buy a house that was built 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, I think, I know, what our intent is in our master plan. Like you said, if it's R1, people are expecting it to be R1 homes, but when they've lived there for 40 years and one of their neighbors has been a quadplex that whole time, I don't think that their expectation is that gets removed and becomes a single-family home. So I don't think that the neighbors are upset by that. I would lean more towards there being if it needed to be rebuilt, if it could be rebuilt under the same footprint, that I think that that's fair for everybody. Yes, ma'am?
I disagree. When you have these quadplexes or single-family homes that have been turned into apartments, you have a transient neighborhood. You don't have the solid, stable neighbors that you can count on for years and become friends and neighbors with, because they change out so quickly. I know I live across the street from it was supposed to be a condominium when it was built, and it turned into apartments. And people come and go all the time. You just don't have that neighborhood feeling. And then on the corner, there's a house that was turned into 4 apartments. Around the corner, there's a house that's been turned into 2 apartments. So you don't have the stable residential neighborhood that you expect when you buy there.
To Ms. Bremer's point, if I may. So this is something also that bugs me, is that there's a difference between a quadplex that was built as a quadplex versus a home that was then walled up, staircases put in, and is now a single-family home with 4 different families living in it. One of the things I would like to do is, if we're going to make this proposed change, that I run it past the city attorney to find out if there's a way to prohibit the rebuilding of what originally started as a single-family home to be rebuilt as a duplex, which is what has ultimately transpired at the end of the day. Because if we're talking about something that was originally a single-family home, it should be rebuilt as a single-family home. Now, again, this is one of the legacy problems I deal with, is prior to me coming here, you had all these homes that were being walled up and changed, and now we have these large homes which host 4 families in it in a single-family residential district. And that makes no sense to me. If you are going to rent out a home in a single-family residential district, I'm of the belief that it should be rented out to one family, because it's a single-family residential district. So that's a proposal I would like to make if I'm going to take it to the city attorney. I don't know if that entirely addresses your concern, but it's something that's also a concern.
Well, I think the master plan has set up these areas for different neighborhoods, and I think we ought to stick with it. If we don't start changing them, like you said, it's gonna go on into the future, and we're never gonna have those R1 neighborhoods.
I'd just like to say that I agree with Ms. Bremer about atmosphere in these different zones. Single-family residences have a different atmosphere than, say, an apartment complex or a duplex. It's just there. You can't deny it. So I think that sticking with trying to keep a zone the way that it's meant to be as zoned it just makes more sense to me.
Mr. Owens? I can understand the older homes that are built, like the one we dealt with tonight. Those homes have been there forever, and there is some benefit to having some single-family residential in that B2 area, because you've got eyes and ears on the area. If a business was broken into, someone who lives there might see something going on. I don't know. I guess that part doesn't concern me as much as the R1 areas.
Well, I think that the issue, and you're not elucidating it, is a single-family residential being put into a commercial district is a lesser use in a higher use district.
Yes.
Versus a higher use multifamily in a lower use district. Does that make sense?
That's exactly right. That's why he gets paid the big bucks.
Yes, sir.
Can opposing view be brought up?
I'm sorry,
this is not a public comment.
Yeah, not at this point, but.
One, I wanted to echo upon what you were saying, because that was a concern of mine. It was much easier to approve something that's a lesser use than a greater use. And part of the issue that we seem to have here is, as you were stating, somewhere the regulation or the regulatory ability of the city has not been there to allow these people to change surreptitiously from single use to more than single use. But if I'm going to kind of split the difference here between the two camps, we are a growing city. We have a lot of new property that's going to be coming under the zone of the city, I'm sure, as we continue to expand. And it's going to be far easier to set those zones apart now for property that we anticipate is going to be coming into the city, for new developments that we anticipate that are coming into the city, and make those contiguous. It's going to be a much easier job to do that than to go back and take the randomness of history and force it to comply with what we wish it would be. Now, it would be great if we could, this is a bad way to put it. It would be great from our perspective, not from the owner's perspective, if we could just fiat and say, this is the way it's going to be, and whether or not that damages your use of your property, we want to make sure this neighborhood is going to be just like this in the future, whether it works for you or not. But I think that is not going to be as easily done in some of these areas that we are currently working with, where it's going to be much more easily done in some of these new areas that we anticipate coming in. And another point I'd like to make is multifamily properties are going to have to be part of the plan going forward because we have a housing shortage. And this is one of the areas where people are trying to move, and you've seen how real estate, now many of us are benefiting from that, how real estate prices went up, but we do have to anticipate that we're going to have some zones where we have apartments and we have duplexes, and we need to make sure that we preserve that as much as possible, but in places where it does work.
We have a plethora of multifamily at the end of Oak Street and over by Prairie Run. Cedar it doesn't have that much area where you can expand.
Yet we keep expanding.
Well, if a person owned a single family in the B2 area and a business wanted to come in and buy that house, that would be easy to do, right? Right. So I think that'll take care of itself in replacing those houses if we have enough businesses come in that want to use that space. But I think when your R1 neighborhoods are so transient, I don't think that's good for the community.
I would tend to agree, which is why the bigger focus has to be on keeping them R1 if they already are, and not allowing them to change sometime in the future into putting new uses like they have in the past into those R1s.
Well, there are more things that you can put in an R1. So if a person owned a fourplex or something, they could put, there are other uses. There are daycares and churches and different things that can be put in those places. They can sell their property to someone who wants to do something like that. But I think it's important to keep to get our R1s back to what they were originally intended to be.
I'm of the opinion that we've spent a lot of time on this new zoning map and creating the zones that we have, and we've done that for, we've looked at a lot of different things, and I'm of the opinion that we should be sticking by that, and that it doesn't really make sense to approve all of these pockets of nonconformity, because I think that gets really close to spot zoning at that point.
I agree.
Any thoughts, Dale, Terry, John?
I like the idea of having all of the zoning. My biggest concern is we end up with these special land use requests, simply because somebody's got an old house and we're gonna come back and have to deal with that again. That's my biggest concern about the whole process.
But that hasn't happened that often.
we also haven't done this many properties.
That's very true.
Well, the rezoning effort that we're going through isn't gonna create this problem. I don't think there's any properties that we're rezoning where it will create a non-conforming use of that property. Just about, I believe every single property is being rezoned in such a way as to conform to what the use of that property currently is. What we're talking about, and you know this, is what happened previously, you know, before, I hate to say it, but I think maybe there's a certain amount of lawlessness in Cedar, where property owners and the planning commissioner, the city council, the administration, were not controlling and keeping tabs on the zoning aspect, which is why perhaps there's a certain amount of, I don't know what's the word, looking at Cedar from the outside and seeing it as a community that hasn't been as organized as it could be. That's what we're doing. We're organizing the city. And we're doing it ultimately to the benefit of the community. But, you know, as has been expressed, it's not always to the benefit of the property owners. So that's the nexus, is whether the ultimate benefit of the community outweighs the individual property owner's desire to have their property be worth as much money as possible, or to put it to the same use that it's currently being used as.
Threw in my maybe 2 cents worth. State law allows the city to have the obligation to get rid of non-conforming uses. It's in state law. And so some cities have different approaches to doing that. And I think one approach that some communities use is they come up with classifications of non-conforming buildings and non-conforming uses, because there's a difference. I can be a conforming house, but I don't meet the setback regulations. So that's non-conforming. So if it burns down beyond 60%, I can't even rebuild it at all. What's the point of that? So I think it might be useful to take that approach that to say maybe single-family homes that are non-conforming by setbacks or some other regulation they don't meet would be one class, and you might allow those to be rebuilt on the same foundation. Non-conforming uses are different. They have a greater impact on the neighborhood. They may be a different class, and you may not allow those to be rebuilt at all if they're damaged beyond 60% or could be 50%. So I think that's something to look at, is to come up with an approach that makes a difference between those two kinds of situations.
I'd rather not rush this. I'd rather look into those things rather than making a decision tonight.
Yeah, and going along with that, we'd go property by property to define each one, correct?
Well, if you did that, you'd want to find out where all these non-conforming situations are, at least the uses. Those are easier to identify, except for the setbacks, you can't do that, it's too much trouble. But uses are one thing that are pretty easily identifiable. And then, once you have the list of uses, you can then take those and decide how to break those up, and then make regulations for each one. And then I think you also have to consider, if you decide that quadplexes or even commercial buildings that are non-conforming by use, if they're damaged beyond 60% and they can't be rebuilt, what happens to the property owner? Do they walk away from it? How long does it sit there and nothing happens to it? In a rapidly growing community, the market may say, great, I'm going to go in there and buy that and put single-family houses. In a community that's maybe not in that mode, it may sit there for a long time. It may never be rebuilt. And then what's the impact on the neighborhood then? So you have to project out what is the consequences of your decisions.
Also, Mr. Johnson just proposed 12 more months of work. So
That's what we're here for.
Job security. I'm worried that you don't have enough to do.
I think our philosophy for more than the last 12 months has been, let's do what it takes to get it right.
Yes.
And so that we have less of these quandaries in the future. And I appreciate that this solution that you're proposing, or an approach that you're proposing could be a solution, gives us some granularity, where we can say, in this type of situation, we'll do something like this, where if the situation's more like this, then we have other options, we can handle it that way. And I think that would give us some relief up here, to not have to paint it with one broad brush.
I guess one of the things, and I don't know if the different non-conforming that you're talking about, I guess I'm just looking at somebody who bought, made the investment to buy that property, not knowing that it didn't conform, and it is destroyed, and they want to continue that, and we're not letting them continue that, then they've lost their investment that they put in there.
It's also not the city or the planning commission's obligation to inform the property buyer of the nonconformity. That should be upon them to investigate. And I know this because there are real estate agents all over the place. Matter of fact, there's one sitting in the audience, I think. When you purchase property, you should identify the zoning of that property. And so I'm of the belief that when people buy property, they should be aware of whether it can be rebuilt or not. Now, that might be one of those legal fictions that I'm aware of because I'm a lawyer, but, it should be incumbent upon the property owner, caveat emptor.
Yeah, exactly.
It didn't happen tonight with the lady that wanted to sell, her bank notified.
Yep, no, so that's a good point. So, and that is a problem, that when she bought the property only 2 or 3 years ago, her bank failed to do the proper research to discover that it was non-conforming. Because, of course, I've now been here long enough that I would have been the city manager at the time. So when the new bank, for the new purchaser, looked into it, they did the proper research, which doesn't always happen.
Right. I think we need to look at this another time.
Yeah, well, I think, I like the different angles that Johnson proposed there, so I think if you can put something together for us to.
We'll bring you options.
If it's legal to, like, a home that is built for a single family, that let's say has been converted to apartments, if it is destroyed by fire, then it can only be built back as a single family. I would like that. Back to its original intent.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Page 46 in your packet, item D, under the new business, we're looking at a possible overlay district for that White Pine Trail. We want to think about the idea of the overlay is really kind of thinking about what sort of businesses are good right next to the trail, or which ones would be, not as enticing to somebody to want to stop in Cedar Springs as they go down that trail. And so page 46 has the kind of the description there of how you can do that overlay zone. Mr. Womack, you got?
Well, I kind of sprung this on Mr. Johnson, even though we had talked about it previously. So with the rezoning effort that we're currently going through, we're changing some of this mixed-use property to industrial, which, as I understand, is what it was prior, to the previous planner. But we do have the gem of the White Pine Trail running right through the downtown area. And I think it would be appropriate for an overlay district to overlay the properties that touch upon the White Pine Trail, which would increase the number and types of businesses that would be permitted on those properties. Case in point would be the west end of Ash Street. If you drive down to the west end of Ash Street, it's a number of industrial buildings. There is one in particular which touches upon the White Pine Trail on the north side of the west end of Ash Street, which, if that were turned into an ice cream shop, I think it would do exceptionally well, or something to that effect. However, ice cream shops are not a permitted use in the industrial zoning district. So, if we want to be able to promote the use of the trail, promote those properties for alternative uses, contrary to the zoning district in which they will now find themselves, an overlay district is an appropriate way to fashion that solution, I think. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, that's one way to do it. Yeah, I would agree with that.
We had discussed that in some way. I'm sorry, I should ask permission first, but we had discussed that when we allowed that to go from mixed use to industrial, that one of the ways we could make that work was with an overlay zone. So this is not a new thing.
I'm curious, I don't know much about overlay zones. Would we have to decide what kind of businesses would be allowed in this overlay zone? Or is there like some preset, kind of zone that we could run off of?
I'm sure Mr. Johnson has a smarter answer than me, but my understanding would be something similar to, okay, currently it's industrial. With the overlay, we are now going to allow any business that would otherwise be permitted in the B2 district also. So in the B2 district, which is the downtown district, you now open it up to food establishments, retail establishments, you know, the types of things that might be benefited by being on the trail. A retail store would be a bicycle shop. A bicycle shop would be a great location on the way out there. So that would be a simple one. I don't know if Mr. Johnson has a better solution.
Well, you get to pick and choose what uses would be allowed in that overlay zone. Might not be everything in the downtown zone, but we would give you a list and you decide what would be appropriate on that on the trail. Keeping in mind that once it's there, the trail users aren't going to keep it in business all year round. It's going to be people that live around there or happen to drive there because it's a good place to go. But it does attract people on the trail as well, so you have to look at it from both sides.
Mr. Johnson, in an overlay too, we get to weigh in on things like setbacks and what we want the businesses to kind of look like, right? So.
Right, you can write that, and you can say it can only go in existing buildings, and then might be one way to look at it. Otherwise, you might as well put the mixed use designation right back on it. I mean, how far do you go to allow those industrial uses to continue, and what properties might best be suited for some kind of an overlay district?
So would it extend from city limit to city limit, the overlay?
Only you decide where it goes.
And how wide? I mean, how wide is the,
Decide that too. What is the depth in the White Pine Trail that it can go?
100 feet width of trail.
Well, it
Trail
would
is,
also be only properties that are contiguous and touching upon the Waypine Trail too.
right, okay.
I think it takes a real eye to look at what might work there, what are the surrounding uses. Do you want to go the whole length of the trail? Maybe it's only a 2-block area where it might fit best.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you could set it just from like Muskegon to Pine, and
Okay, well, I didn't know what the idea
Yeah.
was. From
that's what we get to. It gives us some flexibility in talking about what feels right, and, you know, would be attractive to people coming through Cedar Springs on the trail. You know, just like what we talked about, like what do they see when they're coming up and down Main Street? What do we want them to see on the trail?
If you think about Rockford, at the Rockford Dam, there's an ice cream shop there, there's a little park there, and it just makes sense for those to be there because it's a nice little spot to stop. So we could do something similar here just to attract people.
That'd be great.
So, what do you want to do next on that?
Sorry, I've got 37 windows open. I guess the next question is it something you want to pursue, or would you like Mr. Johnson and myself to start pursuing it?
I think so.
Yep, agreed.
24 months now.
Okay.
It's a job security.
We're pushing this out. Yes.
Are there properties for sale along the White Pine Trail?
I think everything's for sale for the right price.
Okay.
I believe at the end of, actually at the end of Ash Street there by the trail, I believe there's an open building, I think.
There's at least one building that's not currently being used for legal purposes. But, you know, we are talking potentially the entire length of the trail in the city limits. But, you know, part of your job as planning commission member is just to identify, really on a street by street, building by building basis, what is a possibility.
All right, so moving to old business, you had under there a one White Pine Trail overlay for setting a public hearing. I don't think we're ready to do that yet,
No,
right?
we were
So,
being optimistic and hopeful.
okay. Yeah,
It's a dangerous game.
so we, yeah, I don't think we were ready to setting a public hearing date on that yet. So, all right, item A, B, ordinance 216, table of use, new ordinances. I think that's page 50 in your packet if I put my numbers down correctly. Our job here as the planning commission is to, if we so choose, to recommend this to the city council for their approval.
So specifically, we're just asking this body to address the parcels listed in the miscellaneous parcels hearing notice. Even though some public comments addressed previous work that you guys have done, this is specifically about those parcels.
So the list's on page 68, 69. Oh, yes.
Didn't we, send that back?
So I believe this body is approved recommending all of the previous ones.
Yes.
Yes.
I think we are on page 68, miscellaneous parcels.
Yes. Correct.
So is there anything within that list that this body doesn't agree with, doesn't understand? I believe we've discussed them all previously.
We have. I'll make that motion to recommend to the city council to approve the zoning changes for the identified miscellaneous parcels as presented on the public notice list.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, no. Okay. And then the zoning map, 72 is the new one that reflects that.
So there will be some minor changes. Again, as this board knows, because you've been discussing for 12 months, that proposed map was kind of the zoning administrator, my proposal from the beginning, which we have then gone through every single parcel that I made the proposed change on. There have been, I think, 2, maybe 3 changes different from what I originally had proposed. So I believe there are only a few minor changes. 88 Fifth Street, I believe, is one of them. Originally, there was an error in the original mapping, which we then corrected to identify that as an R1 single-family residential property. So we're going to, I believe the recommendation there was to make an R1 to co-join with the properties to the north of there.
Right. Okay. Good, thank you. Right, and then, Rebecca, thank you for putting together all that, all the minutes and attendance reports there for previous year. That was a lot of work. Appreciate that. Okay. Any other correspondence, Ms. Johnson, you have to share with us?
Not at this time.
Okay. Mr. Womack, you got anything else for us?
Sure. So, while it's not standard practice to address public comment, I did try to scribble down some of the comments that were made by Mr. Spitzbergen. And of course, Mr. Spitzbergen has not been here for the last 12 meetings. He's not aware of all the discussions that we've had. And he's not obviously up to date on some of the insight on some of these properties. 88 Fifth Street, as I just previously indicated, was a property that we have addressed. It's a single-family residential home. Just happens to be kind of stuck and sandwiched between a couple of industrial properties. But as this board discussed at great length, that property will never be appropriate for an industrial property. So that is why it is being 429 West Maple, B3 to R1, that is part of a city park. 116 North 5th Street, also part of a city park. 130 West Muskegon Street, mixed use to B3. That similar to 115 and 171 West Muskegon. Those properties, I believe that is the empty dirt lot, the Nicky Hair Company, and the Rollins. And I believe under the current zoning, those are B2. And one of the major problems with B2 extending beyond the downtown district is that B2 allows for a zero lot line setback, which is just not appropriate for those three properties. We did, I believe, discuss previously about changing those to a B1, or that they might be more appropriate as a B1. But again, as this body is aware, we are eliminating the B1 district and changing all those properties to B3, which is what is recommended. And then finally, the initial comment regarding the, I don't have the exact address, 428, I believe, North Main Street.
248.
Sorry, 248 going from R4 to R1, that is also a city park. And of course, Mr. Spitzbergen is aware that he can come and talk with me during regular business hours regarding any property.
Any commissioners, any comments from you?
I would like to thank the community for providing us an almost full house tonight. So much of this happens with just us and maybe Rosie. She's a permanent fixture, but, so we appreciate the participatory aspect of government, and we're glad that you could come and to witness, but also to present whatever you want to present. So thank you for coming tonight.
We're not allowed to comment on the site plan or whatever of the property next door to our building.
We didn't do a public hearing on that tonight because we don't really have a site plan that we can approve. So that's why we didn't do any comments on that. So Mr. Johnson's going to convey to them some of the things we're looking for, and so just watch for the notice that we will have. We do need to approve a site plan for them, so we just didn't have anything to vote on yet.
I'll just give you one quick comment off the record if you want.
Yeah, well, wait until we close the meeting and then you can give it to me off the record. Because right now it's on the record.
And you could, and if you want to come back to the next meeting where it might be, there's a public hearing or public comment spot for that as
Yeah,
well.
even if we don't have it on the agenda, you could still make a public comment on it.
Would that be ex parte communication?
I will share it with you next
That's
month
good.
if it is. Well, to my fellow commissioners, thank you again for entrusting me to chair these meetings. I appreciate, respect your trust. Thanks for that. Mr. Hall, you are the city council representative. Do you have something to pass along to us?
I think I'm on here 2 more years.
Until you reappoint yourself?
No, it's by default. And I would thank all the people that did step up and reserve. Mr. McGrath did notify me last meeting that he would be missing some meetings. He had some family and work issues. And I told him just, that's fine, that gets in the way, so, but please come when you can.
Yep.
There's a lot of good input here tonight. We're hearing from the public, we are listening. We do listen, and we're trying to work through all this inheritance from the past. How do we make things better, but still move forward? We may have to fall back a little bit, but we'll get there. I thank you all for coming this evening, and the council meeting is Thursday night.
Mr. Johnson, you got anything else for us? Okay. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And support? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, no? Thank you, we are adjourned.
I'd just like to invite you all down for a cup of coffee at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Uh-oh.
And then when you leave my place of business,
We don't
go
have-
left
Try,
Oh,
try. Try to go low.
Leave me.